Well, I must tell you, this Brexit anniversary, 4 years on, started off very well for me. I was in a restaurant at 7:30 this morning in the City of London, getting ready for an early breakfast meeting. And there arrived, on the table in front of me, a very large glass of champagne. I was really quite shocked. I said, look, I know what they think about me, but I don't normally start this early. And then I met a chap who'd sent the glass of champagne over, and he wanted me to start the day properly, celebrating 4 years on from Brexit. So that wasn't a bad start to the day. And I wonder, Dame Priti Patel, 4 years on, I mean, you were a huge Brexiteer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you were involved with the referendum party before the Conservatives, and it was an amazing event, and we'd stopped the Remainers, the blockers. 4 years on, how are you feeling about it?
So, look, I wouldn't change anything around Brexit, the campaigns we held, and the case that we made. I believe in the sovereignty of our country, our independence, and you've asked 4 years on, you know, sort of where are we? Actually, look at the health and well-being of our economy, highest levels of employment. You know, we're doing trade outside of the EU. The world is also changing, Nigel, as we know, with geopolitics, and it's important that we can stand on our own 2 feet, and I think we're doing that. Doesn't mean it's all done. No way. There's so much more to do. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, the British public, they got sick to death, basically, of that institutional governance, and we can talk a bit more about this in a bit, you know, the size of the state, all these types of things. We've got a lot more to do, but we've got to show that our institutions are working for them, and they start to feel the benefits of Brexit.
I think on the world stage we do stand taller. I think the AUKUS deal, leadership in Ukraine, whether you agree with it or not, we've shown it, and I think all of those things are true. But, you know, you come from a family that's run small business. 5.5 million men and women out there running small businesses. They really thought with Brexit life would get easier. It hasn't. In fact, in regulatory terms, for many it's got worse. And then the many millions who voted on that day back in 16, who never voted before, who genuinely thought we'd take back control of our borders, and we've chosen not to use it. And that's the problem, Priti Patel, isn't it? Constitutionally, I absolutely agree with you. We've done the right thing. I think the European is becoming a basket case.
Well, you do have to look at what's going on in the continent right now.
Absolutely. And they're at each other's throats on migration targets and sharing, burden
migration
sharing.
Is a big thing, absolutely.
But what about voters here? You know, if I'm someone who rarely votes, but I went out and voted in the referendum, I then voted Conservative in 2019 for the first time in my life, genuinely believing numbers coming to the UK would fall. How am I feeling now?
So people are going to feel very disillusioned about that. That's if they're just looking at pure numbers, full stop. You know, but actually on migration, there are some strong things that we have done, both on the legal side. We did say you'll be able to count people in, count people out, digitalisation of the borders, all of that's very important for business, trade, etc. That's legal migration, and obviously points-based immigration system. We know who's coming here, what kind of skills.
Hang on a second, Priti Patel. Hang on a second. You know, I was making the case for an Australian-style point system years before, in public, anyone in the Conservative Party dared do it, all right? We lowered the barriers initially in terms of what qualifications people needed, what income they needed, and legal net migration last year was 750,000.
You know why? But that's also because of the Ukraine schemes, Afghanistan and BNO. Now,
even without that, it would have been over 300,000.
So there are 2 points here. One on legal migration. We are still bringing too many people over to work in our economy. What does that tell us? It tells us we're not training people enough. We don't have a labour market strategy. Now, that's something I have been going on about for over 5 years, and I believe the Treasury should be doing that. Even today, I was raising that in Parliament. We need a labour market strategy because, quite frankly, there are sectors in this country, and you know this because I've seen you campaign on this and you've gone over, you've been out and about talking about this. You know, some sectors automatically go for that sort of default lever of let's just bring low-cost migrants over to the United Kingdom.
Because we're allowing... But with Brexit, Britain's allowing them to do it.
So we need to do that, but business needs to step up on this as well. And you and I know we've got to have the right incentives in place for businesses to do that. Then on illegal migration, I think that is absolutely the biggest challenge that we have. And it's problematic. I saw your clip earlier on of the Home Affairs Select Committee.
We were promised by this Prime Minister... stood behind Stop the Boats, the Illegal Migration Act as it became. you won't be allowed to stay. And there we saw Sir Matthew Rycroft, typical sort of chinless wonder that runs this country, saying, no, nothing's changed at all. Everyone that comes goes into the asylum system. This isn't good enough. Are the Conservative Party deliberately lying to us?
No, I would say not. I've got my own views about the Illegal Migration Act, also because I tell you where things have gone wrong, and I think I'm in a position to say this, where some of my colleagues aren't. I fundamentally believe the last piece of legislation I brought in was the National Anti-Borders Act. That's where we had differentiation of migrants coming into our system, which meant that we could get them ready to go to Rwanda. We could process their claims fast through the courts. We would bring in the one-stop shop. We'd have all the age verification and age assessment systems in place. I'm afraid by literally having another piece of legislation, the Illegal Migration Act, that moved all that to the left-hand side, and the government has not implemented it. Now, that's a big problem because you can't keep on stopping and starting, and the government has done that. That's a really big problem. They're only now bringing in those measures from the National Anti-Borders Act. My own view, and Nigel, I'm very, very fervent about this, with the Prime Minister as well, we have to fast-track these measures because it's only once you start processing claims to the courts in fast time, and you can then start to remove people.
I mean, Priti, let's face it.
It hasn't happened
Let's face it. Whatever we do in Parliament, the courts in this country, the judiciary, are going to use ECHR. People will make their claims. We will never solve illegal migration all the while we remain part of the ECHR.
I don't believe that.
So you support us continuing staying in the ECHR?
I would not have put forward the Nationality Act of Parliament, National Anti-Borders Act, knowing that, it would just be a spurious measure and the courts would not act. They're doing it now, the government are introducing the one-stop shop. You literally get one chance to put your cases through the courts, and quite frankly, you cannot keep using ECHR. The cases have to go through a very vigorous process. That is the whole point of differentiation of asylum claims. And I'm afraid that changed last year and they put that to one side.
Right, so you're happy we stay in ECHR?
So, look, if there's a case to be made, you and I have discussed this before, Nigel, let's be honest. It's not
But
simple.
our audience are really hot on this.
So the country is alive to this because you and I know, like Brexit, you can't just say we're going to leave and it's all going to be automatically, things will change overnight. It'll be complex. We'll have to get it out of lots of legislation, and I think it's important we take the country and the public with us on this.
I think the public...
And I would work to do that. I can tell you now, I would absolutely work to do that.
Well, I think the public are there already. Priti Patel, I could talk to you for hours.
Thank you.
Former Home Secretary Dame Priti Patel.